My name's Julianna Hayes. I'm a wine writer in the Okanagan Valley, focusing mainly on British Columbia wines. I write 2 weekly wine columns for the Okanagan Valley newspaper group, so they appear in various newspapers in the valley. I also produce an annual wine guide that focuses on all the wines in British Columbia and lists all the wineries. And I have a little pocket hand guide that I've just published, and that came out in September. I arrived in 1996, and in British Columbia there was a total of 36 wineries. Now I think the latest count, and you can ask me tomorrow, the numbers might be different. I think the latest count is around 144 wineries in the province, with license pending for about 13 to 15. So it's pretty exciting to be part of it. Well, I grew up in Quebec and Ontario, and of course Ontario has a thriving wine industry as well. And actually it was one of the fun things I used to do in the summertime every year was take a cycle tour of the Niagara region. And so I was into wine. I had a family that was French-Canadian, so we all drank wines. But when I arrived in British Columbia, in the Okanagan Valley in particular, I couldn't believe what was going on here. There wasn't anything that most people in the rest of the country didn't know about it, essentially. I was quite surprised that very few of the wines in BC got beyond the borders of BC, even into other parts of the country. So seeing this happening right on this new soil that I found myself on was pretty exciting. So I was a journalist by trade, but didn't have a job right away when I arrived here, so I went and worked at a winery. Well, it's one of these industries that has had phenomenal success in the last probably decade that nobody really anticipated it would ever be so successful. For a while there, it looked like if you opened a winery, it was a license to print money here in BC, except for the fact that the land got very expensive to purchase. But it has phenomenal growth rate, as everybody's aware. Back then, I mean, the price of a bottle of wine was, well under $10, and now the average price is bordering on $18 to $25. Because of the economy the way it is, I think we're going to see a little bit of a price correction. Definitely in those areas where the wine industry has overvalued their wines, and there's certainly a case of that. The people have gotten a little bit greedy, as I think it has happened in a lot of industries, because they've been so successful. So I think we're going to see a little bit of leveling off of the prices. It'll be good for the consumer. I also think what we're going to see in the next couple of years is more availability of BC wines, because they used to sell out long before the average person really got their hands on a bottle. And that was certainly true of the smaller artisan wineries that had great cult followings, where people would join their mailing lists and buy up their wines within minutes of release. So we're going to see a little bit of correction that way, so that the average person can now maybe buy a bottle of Black Hills wine or Burring Owl or Blue Mountain. In the next little while, I think the industry is going to slow down, just because the nature of the economy is going to dictate that. We're not going to see the rate of growth, and maybe it'll probably even reduce. There'll probably be a reduction of wineries, but it's not going to. I don't think it's going to be at the level that we've seen other industries have suffering, where there's actual clawbacks of 25 to 50% in production. I think we're going to still see things just kind of level off here, maybe a little reduction, but that'll be about it. I think people here in British Columbia, and certainly some of the bordering areas, really like the regional quality of having local wines at their disposal, and that's always going to be the consumer's thought in this area, at least. Well, I mean, Syrah has been a big surprise for everybody. Definitely, 10 years ago, if somebody had told me they were going to be growing Syrah here, I would have definitely laughed at that. And that was true of a lot of the varieties like Chardonnay, Merlot, a lot of the vinifera that nobody expected could be planted here and thrive here. So that definitely, Syrah, you're going to see a lot more planting of that taking place, because people, they can command the price points for it as well, and it seems to be growing very well here if we can, stave off the winter kill and that sort of thing. But we're going to see a lot of the sort of fringe varieties that have, worldwide appeal, but are still relatively unknown in these areas. A lot of the Italian varietals are coming forth here. Definitely a lot of the lesser known Bordeaux varieties are coming out as single variety wines. And I think another trend you're going to see a lot more of is blending, and a little bit more experimentation of blending. And the other trend will be single variety of single vineyard production, where a winery will release bottles that are made from wines that are from grapes from a single vineyard, so it has a little bit more geographical appeal and has a bit more of a story to tell. Mm-hmm. People like stories with their wines. Well, I've got two components in terms of education. I do wine seminars through the British Columbia Wine Museum, where I introduce them to British Columbia wine. So we do these seminars, and it's a learning experience, getting people to learn more about British Columbia wines and having them taste them in a group, as opposed to, just going out and buying unfamiliar bottles, and they can taste a whole bunch of wines together. And they usually have themes. We do winemaker events. We do events that surround cooking. So there's that component. I also teach writing, which is, part of it is completely unrelated to wine, but as my background being in journalism, and having moved here to the Okanagan with no real, full-time job at my disposal, I had to sort of scrape by and find work in writing that basically made me hunt down opportunities. So I worked very hard as a freelance writer, not just in wine, but also in other areas. So now I teach freelance writing as well. And one of the components of this freelance writing courses are a wine writing course, which I try to teach people, and it's more of a fun course. We do get travel writers who take it, but mostly it's for people who are interested in wine that want to learn how to write a tasting note and want to learn a little bit more about the whole components of wine, and also help them decipher the tasting notes of other critics, which they can never make heads or tails of. So that's been a fun class.